Welcome to the Inner Space Covent Garden talk. Today our talk is Stay Energized and Inspired. We've all had days that leave us feeling exhausted, perhaps stuck in the same old routine, disconnected from what really or truly matters. But it doesn't have to stay that way. We can rekindle our inspiration and boost our energy levels without the need to consume all the coffee in the world. As you know, being energized and inspired feels amazing. We can all agree on that. It makes us feel as if we're on top of the world. It helps kickstart things and stay on track. We've asked our speaker to share easy tips on staying energized and inspired every day, throughout the day, even during challenging times. Our speaker is David Fletcher. He's based in Nova Scotia, Canada, and has worked as an educator, action researcher, and capacity building consultation in Africa, Asia, North America. He specializes in exploring Indigenous wisdom for community resilience. David is going to be sharing with us for the next 40 minutes. And then after that, he'll lead us through a very short but powerful guided meditation. So we're going from understanding to heart and making sure it's all balanced. After that, he'll be taking your questions. So please send in your questions via the question and answer link or via the chat, and I will take those questions and put them to David on your behalf. David, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Archie, and very happy to be here to share a little bit about being inspired and being energized. And I really appreciated being asked to speak on this topic because there are times in my own life where I can spiral down a little bit and need an extra little boost. And being asked to speak on this topic really forced me to think about what are the things that I've learned from others that help keep me energized and inspired. So that's what I'm going to share on. I have developed a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here to keep me on track. So let's just see if I can get that up. I seem to have lost my screen. Here we are. There, I think we're able to see that screen of the PowerPoint, the first slide, this lovely young man who's looking quite inspired and setting the light bulb off. And it helped me think about this idea of staying energized and inspired. If there's a problem with the volume or with the slides, maybe just put something in the chat and RT can get back to me. So I thought we would start, if it's okay, with just a little video clip I have here. Are you able to see that?
We can see it. Thank you.
think it's so important after a busy day just to take a moment to take a breath, to breathe in and out. And I think when we think about inspire, one of the older meanings of inspire is to inhale, to breathe or blow into an experience or what we're doing in life, to infuse our life by breathing. And it's that process of inhaling and exhaling that inspires us. So I wanted to begin with that because I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is a combination of what maybe can inspire and energize us in our bodies, in our human experience, but also in our mind and in our spirit. And I wanted to start just by talking a little bit about some inspirations for me. You probably recognize Mahatma Gandhi, who wrote Experiments with Truth and many other things. And one of the quotes of his that I like very much is, "Truth force is not a weapon of class struggle or any other kind of division. It is an instrument of unity. It is a way to remove injustice and restore social harmony to the benefit of both sides. Strange as it seems, it is for the opponent's sake as well. When truth and love work, both sides win." And this is one of many, many quotes from Gandhiji that inspire me. And I have some others here I want to share from other people who have inspired me as well. This is Angeles Arian, like Gandhi, now passed, but a cultural anthropologist, who wrote, "To live every day to the fullest, one must do three things: set a sacred intention, give gratitude, and take a life-affirming action. Walk the mystical path with practical feet." And I think that combination of the practicality and the spiritual or mystical aspects of our lives has been very important to me. RT mentioned I've had the opportunity to live and work in many countries in Africa with Indigenous people and African descendant people here in Canada, and with many others in many parts of the world who are grounded in their communities. And I think the balance they find or try to find in life is really important. So that's one of the things that inspires me. Nelson Mandela, who I'm sure many of you recognize, the first democratically elected president of South Africa, has also inspired me in many ways. And this particular quote has stood out for me. "We have identified as a crucial need for our efforts at material and social development," and a lot of my work over the years has been in material and social development. But he says that material and social development needs to be matched by what is called an RDP for the soul, a moral reconstruction and development program. So again, he's talking about this combination of what we do in the world and what we do inside ourselves in terms of morality. Daddy Prakashmani, who is the former head of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, wrote a number of years ago, "Negative forces in the world are intensifying. To counter that, to bring about the predominance of good, we must concentrate as never before on the positive." So I'm going to talk a little bit about positive thinking later, and it's not It's not a superficial thing. It's a really important thing to bring back some balance into the world we live in today. And certainly Daddy Prakashmani, who was the head of a, million member organization, um, really used the power of positive thinking. Starhawk, who some of you may know, an activist and an ecofeminist from the United States, wrote, "Life by its very nature is a great power of creativity and transformation, a power that will prevail. Survival goes to those who most effectively cooperate, communicate, and share resources." So this is another inspiring quote to me, and I think you're getting to know me a little bit by the kinds of quotes that I've chosen. Um, we need to engage in the world, but we need to do it in a way that makes a difference for everyone. A couple of others I wanted to share. This one from Martin Luther King Jr. "Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men," which I think many of us would say is very true in the world today. So, how does that inspire us? Maybe to spend some more time working on the spiritual power. I spent a lot of time in West Africa, in northern Ghana, and Malidome Some, who's a Dagara elder, has also inspired me with this quote and many other things. "We have come to a kind of intersection, an intersection which is very crucial in the history of our world. Expanding our consciousness right now becomes the base of our lives. Relinquish control to a heart and soul that is beyond logic." So we need to give control back, I think he would say, to our heart and soul, and put aside some of the decisions that we might make in the material, the social world, logical and rational decisions, and really let our heart and our soul guide us in the future. And the last one I'm going to share here is appropriate, I think, for people in the UK and around the world who know the Brahma Kumaris. Daddy Janki was additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris for a number of years and was based at GCH in London. Some of you may know. And she wrote about peace. She wrote, "People need peace as much as they need food and shelter. Some have been searching desperately for peace for a long time. Peace is an energy created inside. When I speak with peace and you listen with peace, the energy increases." So simple acts we can take can really make a difference for people in the world. So I wanted to share all of those quotes as a kind of inspiration of what inspires me, but really just to raise this question for you. Who inspires you? Where does that inspiration come from you? Oh, my letters disappeared. Who inspires you? Why do they inspire you? And how have they influenced the way you live your life? So I'm just going to leave that with you for a couple of minutes. Who inspires you? Why? And how have they influenced the way you live your life? And just breathe that in. Let it inspire you. So this talk was to be about staying inspired and energized. So I wanted to talk a little bit about being energized and what can energize us. And I already talked about this is sort of a drained battery, an empty battery, and filling it up with inspiration, thinking about who inspires us. Why do they inspire us? How that inspiration changes the way we live our lives. All of that, I think, is one of the key ingredients to recharging our battery. But what are the other things that it takes to energize us, to fill that battery up so we feel strong and capable and empowered to go forth in the world and do what we need to do? Um, and I thought I would talk about energizing first by thinking about the body. We all live in these bodies. At this time in the world, we are guests of these bodies, and they're what allow us to interact in the world. So how do we energize these bodies? Well, we already talked about the inspiration, the breath that's so important. And I think we'd all agree that water is important to keep the body functioning well, everything flowing, all systems lubricated and working the way they're supposed to. And we've all heard these things about drinking 8 glasses of water a day. That's important. Um, but I've been told by some health practitioners, it's not just the quantity of the water, but you need to be taking sips of water all through the day to keep things flowing. It's not a whole bunch of water in the morning and at night, but throughout the day. So that helps with our energy and keeps us energized. Food is so important. Clean, simple food, regular meal times, and food that gives energy, that replenishes and rejuvenates. And I'm not a dietitian myself, but I know when I eat pure food, vegetables from our garden, we have our own garden here, um, and food that's locally sourced and that's organic and doesn't have a whole bunch of preservatives in it and isn't junk food, which I can fall into sometimes, that it gives me more energy. It makes a difference. So food to rejuvenate and replenish helps energize us. And then a big one is exercise. And one of the things that I've learned about exercise, I don't always practice it, but I have learned it, is that activity begets activity. That maybe the first step is difficult, or the first workout, or the first morning walk, or the first long swim. Um, but once you start doing it regularly, once you take that first step, it generates more energy. You don't get tired or exhausted from it. It actually generates more energy and gives you a rhythm and energizes you for your body moving forward. So that rhythm of exercise is energizing in itself. But at the same time, there needs to be some balance. There needs to be some rest. And rest in itself is a form of exercise where your body is not just sitting there, it's actually doing things to readjust and be ready for the next point of exercise. So that rhythm of exercise with your body is so important. A big one to energize ourselves is to dispose of waste. And I'm not going to go into any details about cleanliness or body hygiene or any of those things, but we all know that if you get up in the morning and you're feeling a little tired and you don't know if you have energy for anything and you just don't really want to get moving, you don't really get moving. But if you have a shower and you wake up and you brush your teeth and you have a bite to eat and you get ready, that process of getting rid of the waste, getting rid of the sleepers from your eyes, combing your hair, having your shower, it gives you some energy and gets you moving. And these are simple tips. We all know them, but do we all follow them on a regular basis? I think that's really important. And then the last one that I put in here that I personally think is so important, but not just for me, for the whole human species, is to spend time in nature. I think it's our gift at this time in the civilization of the world that we are living in these bodies on this planet at this time, and we're sharing the planet with other living beings, with birds and trees and animals and cats and dogs and plants, and we need to recognize those relationships. Even if we're living in big urban areas, our food, our sustenance, it still comes from the natural world. Ultimately, everything comes from the natural world. So, what is our relationship with the natural world? And how do we find time to nurture that relationship and be part of that relationship? You know, there might only be half a dozen trees on our walk to the tube station, but do we know what kind of trees they are? Do we watch as they change through the seasons, and their leaves come and go and change color? You know, do we take time to thank them and offer them gratitude? The same for the birds that might be flying around. Do we know where they nest? Do they know their migration patterns? Do we have a relationship with nature? And do we honor the time that we have, however small it might be, on a piece of grass where we can put our feet on the grass? Um, so I think a time in nature is really important to energize our bodies and bring that energy in. But just as important as our bodies, I think, is our mind and spirit. And I love this sense of body, mind, and spirit. We are beings who are made up of body, mind, and spirit. And it always reminds me of a Ojibwe elder I met many, many years ago, Mede Magwan, who talked about in their tradition, men would, I'm not a very good example, but men would have long hair. And the first thing every morning is they would divide their hair into 3 strands and braid it together. And that ceremony was to remind them of body, mind, and spirit. Body, mind, and spirit. Body, mind, and spirit. That our existence on the earth at this time as human beings is living our lives through body, mind, and spirit, the interconnection of all three of those things. So how do we energize the mind and spirit? We talked about the body, we talked about breathing and inspiration, and I shared some inspirational people and their quotes that have had a positive effect on me, uh, and inspired me. But when we think about other things that energize the mind and spirit, what are they? And I think one of them is clarity. Um, like water, we need flowing energy into our mind and spirit, and it's powerful. It's enduring energy. Water doesn't confront things, but it manages to go around them or over them or through them. And that power of water and clarity in our mind and spirit is so important. And I think one of the ways we can find that is so often in the world today, we have thousands and thousands of thoughts coming at us all the time. It literally feels like we're being bombarded by those thoughts. And how do we find clarity? How do we find a flow through those thoughts that works for us? And one of the things that's made a difference for me is what some people call traffic control. Just set a timer on your phone for 3 or 4 times during the day. Some people do it every hour, where a little alarm goes off, and just for 30 seconds, you stop. You stop the bombardment of all of the things coming at you, and you just find some clarity for moving forward in that silence, in that stop. And I think that's one way to energize the mind and the spirit. Nourishment, food is another thing that's so important for the mind and spirit. And how do we focus on nourishing ourselves with positive thoughts and positive words? Good words and good thoughts that are going to nourish us and give us energy and not take us downward in a descending spiral. How are we going to choose thoughts and words that are going to deepen our understanding of things, not just send us off in different tangents, but actually help us deeply understand something? That kind of rich nourishment that we need is something to focus on and make choices about. And just like I say, I need to work on, avoiding junk food. We need to be really careful about um, taking in junk thoughts or junk words from the people we interact with, the YouTube clips we watch, the TV we watch. Avoid the junk as much as possible and nourish ourselves with positive words, positive thoughts. It's so important to think of energizing ourselves in that way. I also find for my mind and spirit, there's music that I know nourishes me. And it's not necessarily the dance and energetic music that makes me move, but music that helps me to flow, that helps me to be centered and to be calm, can be really important nourishment through the day. And I'm a journal writer. Writing in my journal, putting words down in that way is a way to capture the essence of some of my thoughts and energy and put it on paper so that it's then available to nourish and bring positive energy to my mind and my spirit. So we need to, I think, feed ourselves in that way for the mind and spirit. Then in terms of exercise for the mind and spirit, and I mean, these are just, ideas that came to mind for me thinking about this presentation. There's lots of other ways we can work on this, but I thought about in terms of exercising the mind, there's probably 5 S's that are really important. One of them is silence. And I talked about this earlier, with the traffic control, stopping, 3 or 4 times a day. But silence is a really important exercise for the mind and spirit. And we have to think about silence as an act. There's so little silence in our world. To choose to spend some times in silence is a real exercise. And it can be rejuvenating. It can be magical in many ways. So I think one of the exercises we need to do is to spend time in silence. People talk about SOS, stop, observe, and steer. Stop all those thoughts coming in. Observe what are negative, what are waste thoughts, and then really steer our mind towards positive thoughts. And we can do that in silence. The second S I mentioned here is to smile. And smile is something we do with our body, but I think it has a direct impact on our mind and spirit. It gets endorphins moving in different ways. The kind of interactions and eye contact we might have with others is going to change when we smile. And smiling and being positive and being sweet in our interactions with others is an exercise we can choose to do, and it's going to nurture our mind and spirit. It's going to energize our mind and spirit. Another S is service, and I think service is really an important one in terms of our interactions with others because we don't know what they're going through. We don't know what anyone else's situation might be in any given moment or any given day. But when we interact with them, when we think about them, when we connect our spirit with them, do we do it in a positive way, giving them love, giving them joy, giving them power to adapt to or to deal with the situations? Like, are we in that sense of giving? Because I think there's a secret that when we have that orientation of service, when we have that sense of giving to others, we're going to get back ourselves. We're going to get energized and benefit from that sense of serving others. And in every situation, every interaction, just trying to make the situation a little bit better than it was before. And maybe that's just with a smile. Maybe that's just with some silence instead of engaging in the busyness of the conversation and the complaining about the weather or the tube or the wars taking place all over the world. Um, but just spending that time trying to make the situation a little bit better by serving others, listening to them with empathy and supporting them in what they're doing and not trying to get them to change. So service is an important one. And then self is an important one. So often we forget the self and we forget to take care of the self. And when we engage with our bodies in the world, it's all externally oriented, trying to change things. But we need to spend some time with the self and supporting the self and energizing the self and putting good wishes into ourselves. And that's going to make a difference as well. And then I couldn't stop by not including sleep in these five S's. Because I think when we think about exercising the mind and the spirit, just like we exercise the body, it needs some sleep, it needs some rest, and that can be a rejuvenating time. And our minds these days, constantly from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed, they're being bombarded by thought and idea and news clip over and over and over and over and over again. How do we stop that train and get some restful sleep that clears the mind and gets us ready for the next day or the next activity? And that sleep can cleanse the spirit as well and help take away some of the negativity that may have accumulated on the spirit. And that's this next point, which is the disposal of waste. And we need to think about waste for the mind and the spirit as any negative thoughts, any negative words, any negative actions, negative interactions, negative connections, negative relationships, any of those things. We need to move them on. We need to push them aside if we're going to get energized. And it's a really, really valuable thing to take time doing. That if we spend a lot of time in regrets of the past, we're not going to get energized. If we spend a lot of our time worrying about the future, we're not going to get energized. We need to detach from and put that waste aside. It will come back to us if we need to deal with it at a later time, But to get energy to move forward, we need to be able to dispose of some of the waste and put it aside. And I think that's such an important thing to do. And then I'm going to say again for the mind and the spirit, that gratitude for nature is also really important. You know, we talked about the sun and the rain and the ground and the trees and the plants, you know, being connected to that softness, that fertility, that growth, that abundance of life, I think is really important for energizing all of who we are, including our mind and including our spirit. And giving gratitude for nature and giving something back to nature is so important for the mind and for the spirit, because we've been taking from nature for a very, very long time. And there's an opportunity for us now to make peace with nature, to right some of the wrongs in that relationship. And when we spend that time, I think it will energize our mind and our spirit for other things we want to do. So those are some of the thoughts for inspiring and energizing both body, mind, and spirit. But we have to remember, you know, the batteries, where are they getting charged? You know, if they're rechargeable batteries, we can do those things, but you'll notice there was a little bit at the top here that was still yellow. It still hadn't filled up. And how do we fill that up? You know, the battery charger needs to be plugged into the mains. And what does that mean for body, mind, and spirit? And in my experience, it's you know, some sense of a higher being, a higher entity, whatever you might decide that is, but something that's pure and true and that can recharge us and give us energy. We need to have a chance to reconnect and plug into something outside ourselves in order to get that extra energy. Um, and I would encourage us all to think about, you know, what energizes you in body, mind, and spirit. And when do you plug in to get something external? How do you plug in? Who do you plug in with? Or what do you plug in with? And where do you plug in? And really be conscious about what those things are for you and where you plug in to get that energy. And I'll give you another minute just to think about, how do you live your life to stay inspired and energized? And to think about that for yourself. How do you live your life to stay inspired and energized? So I'm coming to the end of my talk, but there's a couple of other things, a few more slides here I wanted to mention. And you know, now that you're energized and inspired, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's that little guy that was in the advertisement this morning. What's he going to do now that he's all inspired and energized? And you know, sometimes when we look at the world these days, there's so much going on. It really takes away the energy, and we wonder, what can we really do that's going to make a difference for all of this? And I think about, you know, in my work, I've always been inspired by the Buddhist scholar Joanna Macy, who talks about holding actions for what's going on in the world, things we don't like, creating alternatives, all the efforts we can make to create alternatives. But she also talks a lot about a shift in our consciousness, a shift in our values, a spiritual conscious revolution of our values that needs to happen. And I think that's a really really important part. And she talks about how that process starts with gratitude. It starts with honoring our pain and recognizing that there are darkness and problems in the world, but really choosing and making the effort to see the world with new eyes. And then going forth with our inspiration, with our energy, going forth into the world and making the changes we can. So that maybe the question is not, what are you going to do when we think about being in the world and, engaging out there in the world, but thinking about what are you going to be and really putting our effort into what we are going to be in the world. I know we've all heard this adage before, but it's so important to remember we are human beings, not human doings. So it's not really so much about what we're going to do in the world, but what are we going to be in the world? And I think the only thing we can be is the best we can be, making those choices for ourselves. And to be constructive, be positive, be focused on building things and moving things forward. And engaging with courage, engaging with compassion and cooperation in every interaction, every relationship we have in the world, and really checking ourselves to ensure that we are bringing courage and compassion and cooperation to everything we do. Be generous and be tolerant. And tolerant is one of these words that I've learned uh, a lot about in the last little while. I used to think of tolerant just kind of as putting up with. But then someone gave me the image of an apple tree. And even when kids come with stones and they're throwing them at the apple tree still drops and gives up her apples, her nourishment to the kids that are there. And that's a different kind of tolerance. Even when, you're insulted and things are not going the way you want and whatever, can you still be generous? Can you still give your gifts, your sweetness, your nourishment to others and to the world? And that's a much deeper understanding, I think, of tolerance. Be accommodating. We don't know what's going on with other people in their lives, but how can we accommodate them, listen to them with empathy, be present for them without compromising our principles? We need to set boundaries, but that we can accommodate their energies and we can help move and transform their energies to be more positive and more energizing. Staying balanced is so important. Rest and exercise, silence, as well as engaging socially in the world. And a big part is, making choices for our own well-being. We have the ability to make those choices. And I know myself, sometimes I know all these things and I don't necessarily make the choices, but we can make choices for our own well-being. And I think that's what we need to do. And if we make those choices for our body will be inspired and energized. And if we make those choices for our mind and spirit, our mind and spirit can be energized and inspired as well. And we can get extra energy from our belief in the one above, the great mystery, the divine, whatever we might call it. And that can help us to stay energized and inspired. So I'm going to stop there. I went a little bit over time, but thank you very much for listening and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Would you take us into a meditation now?
Yes, just for just for a couple of minutes, so we'll have some time for questions. But maybe we'll just go back and take a couple of deep breaths as we did at the beginning. Put aside some of the words we've heard in the last 30 minutes. But just take in the feeling, the inspiration, the positivity. And think for ourselves what brings clarity in our lives. What brings us nourishment, not just for our body, but for our mind and our spirit. How can we exercise our mind and spirit with moments of silence and service to others, and smiles that will serve ourselves and others we interact with? How will we choose to dispose of waste, not spend our energy in the past or the future, but in the energy of the present moment, so we can make a difference and bring love and joy and peace to each moment? And how do we continue to give gratitude for nature and the natural world? The sun that shines, the rain that falls, and the wind that blows. And if we do all those things, we will inspire and energize ourselves for the roles we're expected to play in this world at this time. Shanti.
Thank you, David. It's been a very insightful evening, and I love how you addressed inspiration from others, but also inspiration and the ability to be inspired and energized in a way that looks after our mind, our heart, our body, and our relationships. So thank you very much. There's been a few questions, but I'm going to start with this question first. Is it possible to smile and have the same result you spoke about, even when you don't mean it?
I don't think it hurts to smile. I don't think we want to give fake smiles. But I think at the same time, we can choose to recognize there is something positive that can happen in every situation. And even if we're smiling internally, it means that we're giving love to that situation. We're giving peace to that situation. We're smiling because we're able to detach and get some distance from the situation and recognize that in the bigger picture, it's all going to be okay. I don't know if people have seen that movie, the um, oh, I'm not thinking of the name of it now, but a Indian movie where all the seniors move to the the place, something hotel, and one of the lines in it was, it's not yet the um, it's all going to be fine in the end, and if it's not all fine, it's not yet the end. So that might seem a little flippant, but in fact, I think there's some real wisdom in that, that this too will pass. And if we're in that situation, we don't want to smile to people that everything's okay, but I think internally we need to keep that stable stage of knowing that it's all going to be okay in the end.
Mm, thank you. Next question, and it's in regards to energy. If you have miserable and stroppy colleagues at work, how do you keep your energy up and not get pulled down by their negative energy?
I think it's a very real question, and I think we've all had those experiences. Um, we need to keep to ourselves. We need to withdraw some time from the chatter that's going on about all the negativity, etc., in the office. Um, People might not like it if we're not there at coffee break or at lunchtime talking with them about everything bad that's going on. But if we take our coffee and go for a walk in the park that's a block away, or just stop and do some deep breathing, or they're talking about some negative stories and we have one little positive story to share. Make the choice to do that. It might be hard. People might not like it, but in the long term, it can have a very positive effect. And it's about choices that we have to make. And it's not easy, but sometimes withdrawing, finding the peace within ourselves, detaching totally from the situation if we need to. But then when we're ready and when we feel confident, bringing some positivity, bringing different energy into the space, into the conversations. Whether we just do that with a smile and with our looks, or whether we actually engage in conversation about positive things. I think it can make a difference.
Thank you. It's again looking after the self, and taking that time to value our mind and our body and our environment. So that's an amazing answer.
Yeah, the
Thank
only thing we have control over is ourselves. So we can't control what everybody else is going to do, but we can make choices about what we do ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was lovely. Um, the next question is about how to stay positive when there are health issues, and the person has had a tumor removed, but um, but there were consequences, and as a result of the surgery, um, there's been side effects, and they now have to live with that. So, how do you stay positive on that basis?
So I don't know the individual situation. We all go through different challenges and we need to make some choices from ourselves, what's important in our lives as we go through those challenges. Um, but we're not unidimensional human beings. We're not only able to do some things. Um, I have a sister who is deaf. She does not hear. I love music. I don't know how I would survive without music, but she does. And she's an artist and a sign language advocate, and she has found ways to to function positively in the world and to stay positive when she isn't able to enjoy some of the things that I do. Sometimes, health conditions create mobility difficulties for us. That doesn't stop us from reading. That doesn't stop us from going into silence and working on, the values and virtues and nourishing the respect we're going to have in our thoughts for all other living beings. There's lots of different ways, we can live our lives and we can be in the world. And it's always challenging when we have to change from a way we were in the world before. Something has happened and now we have to do things differently. But there are many, many opportunities and many other things we can do. And we can find some positive energy in all of those things. And, we just have to send good wishes to others and good wishes to ourselves that we will discover and find those things and find the energy to nurture those things so we can bring positivity into our lives.
Thank you. Recently, my older brother has suffered a stroke. Naturally, he is devastated and cannot do so many things and feels very down. What can I do to help him apart from praying for him? All his life, he has really lived a life of service.
Yeah, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm just giving opinions, from my own experience. And strokes can be very devastating and it plays out differently with different people. Um, and if someone has lived a life of service, they probably like doing things for others, and it might not be possible to do things for others anymore. But you can send people good wishes, and the power of good wishes, I think, is not measurable. I think it's immeasurable. We just haven't found a way to figure it out yet. And if there are 10 people that you want to send good wishes to, just put those pictures up and spend time in silence sending good wishes to those people. If there are 10 strangers in 10 different parts of the world that you want to be of service to and send them good wishes, you can do that. Just giving prayers might seem like a small thing, and we give those prayers to the person who has had the stroke. But how do we find a way where that person can also use whatever energy he may have at this point in time to give service, to give prayers to others? Because I think there is power in sending good thoughts out into the world. And I have certainly had experiences where I have felt that energy from others, and others have said they felt that energy from me, and it doesn't hurt. So why not try it? Why not do that? Why not find a space where the person can still be of service to others, and service to the world can still happen.
Thank you. I have one last question. There are a few more, but one last question I would really like to put to you. You spoke about tolerance and tolerance being like an apple tree, that the apples will fall and be shared. And it's a lovely concept. In everyday life, is it possible that if you lived your life that way, you could be taken advantage of? Um, and if the answer is no, why not?
The answer might be yes. The answer might be yes, that you could be taken advantage of. Um, But what does that really mean to your well-being? You know, if you want to give generously to others, and you spend time filling yourself, you spend time filling your body, filling your mind, filling your spirit, so that you're able to give to others, even when they might insult you, even when they might take advantage of you. If you're full and you keep filling yourself and you give to others, then it's fine. You're not losing anything because you're not filling because of a transaction with the people you're giving to. You're not filling from those people in the external environment. You're filling from your own choices, your own connection with the supreme, with the divine. You're making choices to inspire yourself and to energize yourself with good practices for your body, mind, and spirit. So give generously to others. It can't lose. People can take advantage of you, but you can't lose because you're filling yourself always, and you will always be inspired and energized, and you're just giving generously to the world.
Thank you. That is a very wise answer. Thank you very, very much for this evening, and for taking the time to share your insights with us.